At the bottom, you got the New York Central tracks coming out of the helix and coming out on the lower level here. And what town are we in here?
We're in the town of West Lorne, which is about 200 people back in the mid-90s, or the mid-50s, I should say.
And what sort of industries do we have in here?
Well, there was two. This is the New York Central. You can see the double-track main.
Yeah.
And then coming off at the station, and industrial track going into Erie Flooring and Wood Products. So they make flooring.
Right.
And they've been in existence for 100 years.
Wow.
And they have a big facility.
Now I notice there's lots of light under here. You've got a fairly clever system. I'm just going to show little shots of it here, but you managed to use Christmas lights, I see, eh?
Well, we're
string them along.
We're considering pulling those out and using LEDs.
Right. Yeah, they'll generate a little bit more light under here.
More light and less heat.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of lights that are on there.
For sure. Yeah. Quite an extensive industry, though. It looks like there's tracks that are obviously coming in on this side. Are you eventually going to put some track over here, I think, as well?
Yes. And this will be the team track.
Right.
So you'll have gravel for the roads coming in there. You'll have road oil coming in there. Mm-hmm. There's a telephone pole manufacturer that's in there.
Right.
There'll be a
cattle
loading facility. And this is gravel coming in for the and this is another stock car.
Excellent.
So you could put almost anything in there.
Mm-hmm. And then over at the end over here, there's some additional stuff related to the lumber company across the track on the other side. This is part of the line that you were talking about. That's the Chesapeake and Ohio.
Chesapeake and Ohio, exactly.
So as we were coming out, this is New York Central's main here. These two tracks.
Yep.
And this one here is the C&O.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. So on the C&O side, we have what sort of a facility here?
Well, this
looks like a Mike Hamer building.
It is a Mike Hamer building.
They're everywhere.
Well, he did a marvelous job. I think you also helped out on that particular one.
A little bit on the staining,
the weathering and the staining and this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Very typical of a grain elevator in southwestern Ontario. Very, they were never painted or anything. Dark and.
Then over here we've got some more wood products.
Well, this is it's a company called Milner Rigsby.
Yeah.
And there's
some prototype
there's
pictures.
The building itself.
Wow.
And so there's my version of it. This is the other side of it.
Sure.
So it's Milner Rigsby.
Yep.
And I actually built this building, and it went in here.
Right.
But I don't have enough room. So it's now on Tommy Hood's layout.
Okay.
And so they never compete. You have to remember this is only about 500 yards away from the other major flooring.
Right.
This fellow made the little parquet.
Oh, yes.
I've got a feeling he used the leftovers from the other building.
Yeah.
Or it was a father-son, and the son said, I've had enough of this, I'm going to build my own thing over there. Who knows what the story was.
Yeah.
So that's what this building is.
Question for you.
Yeah.
How is it that the C&O ends up with a railroad in Canada?
They bought it.
They bought it.
It was actually called, what was it? The Lake Erie and Detroit River.
Amazing. And
it was built by Hiram Walkers of Walker's Distillery.
Yeah.
Because in the fall, when the farmers were bringing their grain into Windsor, which is where Hiram Walkers was located, right on the river, they would ruin all the roads because it would be wet, and their carts and wagons and horses would just destroy the roads. So the municipal authorities encouraged Hiram Walker very closely to build a bloody railroad.
It's incredible.
And so he did. And
of course, they couldn't convince any of the Canadian roads to expand.
No.
Yeah.
So essentially, he kept trying to sell it to the New York Central. But they didn't want it because it was in most cases it's right beside their existing
Line, yeah.
line, so they certainly didn't need that. So he kept building a little bit further, and he was taking business away from the New York Central because they were mainly focused on through trains,
Right.
and he was focused on local
Industries.
grain mills and local industries and this type of thing. So he built as far as St. Thomas, at which point the New York Central said, "We give up. You can have trackage rights through to Buffalo."
Ah,
As soon as he got through to Buffalo, now somebody was interested in buying it
of course, yeah.
because
You got
go
another.
through. He had access across the river in Detroit. He had access across the river in the Niagara River. The Père Marquette, which is primarily a Michigan railroad, and they did a lot of their lumber and this type of thing. But they couldn't go anywhere. They could go about as far as Toledo, and then they had to give all their wonderful traffic to somebody else.
Yeah.
So they ended up buying
That
Hiram
section
Walker's
eventually.
Railroad. And then the C&O took over the Père Marquette. The Père Marquette had a lot of automotive traffic, both cars and parts going out to the assembly plants that were in Massachusetts and New Jersey, etc.
Yeah.
And so they also had heavy-duty through trains and going through Canada into Buffalo, and then they would pass it off to the Pennsy or the Lehigh Valley or one of the other there.
That's a fascinating. Leaving West Lorne, we had the New York Central, and we also have the C&O that are running side by side. Here we got on the back tracks are your New York Central tracks, and it looks like a small yard here that you've got set up.
Yeah. This
For
is
the C&O.
C&O yard. This was their major yard in Canada.
Okay.
I'm
It's called what, Talbot
It's
Yard?
Talbot Yard.
Okay.
Talbot was a famous historical figure,
Right.
and so essentially the through freights come here, drop some trains, pick up there, drop some cars, pick up some cars, and head off to Buffalo.
Okay. So
where
that's
they-
all that traffic that you basically have pulled from Chatham and from West Lorne
And from Detroit.
and from Detroit, and it all ends up here, and it
Yes.
gets sorted to see what stuff what trains are going to go on, I guess, back towards Buffalo.
Yeah. One of the problems that I've had, one, it's a little bit too far back, and
Sure.
two, it's not big enough.
Yeah.
So I'll be putting another 12 inches of yard here,
Okay.
bringing the whole thing forward.
Yes.
It's just too tough for the guys. I never intended this to be
In there.
as
like
busy as it was,
Yeah.
but things happen and things develop. So I'm going to have to modify this yard, and probably there's 3 track now, a through and 2 yard tracks. I'll probably have to go to about 6 or 7 yard tracks to adequately take care of the business.
Well,
So
okay. So we're continuing on the lower level here, and we're now coming into the main part of St. Thomas, I take it here, right?
Yep.
So you got another switch tower here.
This is BX Tower,
Right.
And
What happens at BX now? What's the requirement here? I see there's a number. You have this is where the C&O joins.
well, this is the C&O coming in here
Yes.
with the beige
Yeah.
track, and it then goes through. That controls this switch work.
Right.
This is the switching lead for the New York Central Yard,
Right.
so it controls the complex trackage going into New York, the St. Thomas. These are the 2 mains with the gray ballast on them.
Right.
So there's not much coming off those because that's primarily passenger traffic.
Right.
All the freight traffic stops in the yard.
So there's a lot of activity here too. I see that you've got some sidings here that are right by the station.
Well, this is for the express tracks,
Right.
and
So this is traffic coming off passenger trains?
off passenger trains.
Excellent.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that gives you that operational thing.
There's also one CPR combine. The CPR has a a local that comes into St. Thomas, and it carries a combine. So the combine is put in here for the 3 or 4 hours that it takes for the CPR to do its switching and put a train together for the turn, and it goes back up to Woodstock on the CPR main line on the way to Toronto.
Now, I've seen photos of the St. Thomas station. This is incredible. This is another one of your scratch builds,
Yes.
eh?
Yep.
I love the lighting and the effect.
Well, interesting story. This is all LEDs, and we were just newly using them, so we had all of these LEDs in place and everything was wonderful. And we decided, well, how are we going to power this? So we thought, let's power it from the track. The track's right there.
Yeah.
It's just a pair of leads. And over the next 2 months, one by one, the LEDs went out.
Oh, yeah.
LEDs don't like alternating current.
No, they don't. No.
So we pulled it all apart. This station actually comes together. It's built in 3. One, the roof, and that comes off.
Right.
Whoops.
Whoops. Okay.
The chimneys come off too.
Yeah.
This part here is the second story. It comes off. And then this is the ground floor. This station, when I first saw it in the mid-90s, was decrepit.
Right.
Abandoned and everything else. It's now been taken over by the North American Historical Society. They have restored about 2/3 of it at this stage. It's fantastic.
And they're making it into office complexes and things like that, and stores? And
primarily offices at this stage, but they also have rebuilt the kitchen.
Yep.
Or the dining room, which because you have to remember that when this was first built, there were no dining cars.
Yep.
So the people on the train would wire ahead what they wanted for lunch or dinner or whatever. The train would stop. They'd all rush into the dining room. They'd have their meals all ready, sit down, have a dinner, get back on the train, and head off.
That's pretty comfortable.
So about 1925, they closed the dining room because all these trains had dining cars by that stage. So I built it with the dining room.
Excellent.
Well, they've refurbished it with the dining room. So
what goes around comes around, eh?
Exactly. So this was the major, obviously not the major, but it was the division point.
Yeah.
It was the main area for repairs. And it was the main offices. The second floor was all offices. They actually had a girls' dorm up in the far side here at one point. This was the staff for the kitchen and the staff for the dining room. And of course they had to protect these girls by one entrance in and one entrance out, and keep it where there was lots of management and brass around to make sure that the train guys didn't go sneaking in and out and all that kind of thing.
This is quite an interesting facility that you're building here.
Well, this is the repair facility.
Yep.
And I built it with three bays.
Yep.
And it was actually 13 bays long. So you can see I'm still working on it.
There's some lovely machinery parts in there. You can see some are still in packages, and there's your steamer.
They're ready to go.
They're ready to go. They found their location. And also, too, you've got an interesting little facility back here that...
let me take this out of the way here.
Yeah, well, you just got that temporarily, but it looks like another
this is
area for moving the... it'll eventually be used for moving trains from one track across to another and so on. Transfer table, I guess?
Transfer table.
Yeah. So this facility then is, what, a New York Central facility?
Yep.
They really invested a lot in St. Thomas.
Well, this was built by the originating, well, not this one here, there was another, the original locomotive shop.
Right.
It was also about 300 feet long, and and then what happened was the doors got too small for the big steamers, so they couldn't get them in. So they built this, and of course modernized it in 1914. This was 1873. So at that stage, they had to put in this transfer table because it comes down to about here in real life. Sorry, this is the freight house.
Right.
Every town had a freight house.
Yep.
And that still needs some
Under
work.
construction.
Under construction, but
Yeah.
but I've got the color right and the windows right and
Are
the beige
you
right.
going to use magnetic couplers back there? It's quite a distance from the front.
Well, we can get in from the right-hand side, actually.
Okay, so it's a delayed
But
uncoupling kind of thing that
Yeah.
you do.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is, you know, pretty typical of the town of St. Thomas in the background. The yards took, you know, split the town in half. And, so that's downtown across the tracks.
And now we're going to go through this behind this post.
This is the industry side of St. Thomas with the coal tower, and down below you is the sand house. Go down a bit, Chris. Yep, get right in front of you there.
Okay,
There's the
yep.
sand house. And in the background is, there'll be a coal dealer, and there's a stockyard, and there's an iron foundry in the back there too.
Yes. So lots of potential for freight movement.
Then we start the initial trackage into Buffalo.
Right.
And
So you just put a basic scenic divide here to separate the two areas. So
Okay.
that's kind of a clever way to do it. You just basically put an artificial wall in and say, okay, now we're in
somewhere
another
else.
part of the world.
Yeah. Okay, so now we've arrived in Buffalo, underneath the bridge, a nice model trick.
Mm-hmm.
And we're into the major Buffalo Central Terminal, which was again built from about 3 miles from downtown, and the downtown never grew out. It had 7 of these umbrella-style platforms.
Yep.
Which is, so this was built in 1929, and this was the style of facility at that time. We saw Detroit, which was an enclosed one, which was built about 1910. And back in the Illinois Central, we saw the kind of the iron peaked facility, which would have been built, you know, in the 1850s and 60s.
Mm-hmm.
So on the layout, we have the 3 major styles of facility.
This is another architectural style building then that you made here.
Yep.
It's incredible. I mean, you can see that there's some dimensionality that's just created in a very small space, eh? In terms of the depth of it and the way the stonework works. And
In the background here, you know,
yes.
this big building here
Yep.
was where all the clerks hung out. You can imagine how many clerks they needed to process the paperwork. But the way we built this, we built, because it's so repetitive, you can see this and this are identical and these are identical.
Yes.
All the other ones are identical. Mm-hmm. So what we did, we built one of each,
Right.
and then we took photos.
Why not?
And then pasted it on, and added a few, you know, things like this with the cornice.
Sure.
And this part here and that type of
Just to
thing.
give it some depth.
Some depth.
Yeah.
And added this part down here, which is where the mail and the baggage went from the station.
Mm-hmm. That's very clever. And then again, you have your freight traffic in the front.
In the front, yeah.
So here, I guess, was there any additional work that was done in terms of breaking up and putting together passenger trains, or did they go right through?
No, they typically go right through. In real life, there was some here. I just didn't have the space to do
Right.
it. The one train that does work here is the Mail and Express train.
Right.
And down here is going to be the REA facility,
Right.
and this track will be the post office facility.
Oh, okay.
So, in fact, relative to the station, this is about where those facilities were for the New York Central.
Now you've got something else way down here that you've got on the go. Is it a locomotive facility, roundhouse kind of thing that you're going to put in?
I haven't quite decided what it's going to be.
Yeah.
It's hard to get trackage in there, I can tell you that. I'm
Yeah.
not sure what I'm going to do there. Anybody has any suggestions?
Very hard to tell, I guess, what you can do other than maybe a few locomotive park.
Well, they had a stockyard, a big stock facility in Buffalo.
Yeah. So that's what it might end up as.
It's very difficult to get in there to operate.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you tend to stand where you're taking the picture from.
Yeah.
So to get in there is going to be difficult.
You almost need some sort of a space to stand up in there. I can see there is a small spot there.
Yeah. You still whack your head as you go underneath.
Yeah.
Carefully.
So now we're going through the wall on the other side again.
Yes. This transfer track is what makes this staging available.
Right.
If I had to put a track ladder here with switches, I'd have been halfway to Montreal by the time I did that. So this is a very simple thing. You simply see which headlight is on. This is where you pick up your passenger train or your freight train.
Right.
And then you move this just by hand, set it up, and drive off.
So what happens here is it serves not only as Detroit as a terminus, but it's also the staging for trains coming back the other way.
Yep.
And so trains coming out of here end up on a loop and heading back the same way they came on the back track.
Exactly.
Perfect. Okay.
Yep.
And you've got a little industrial area here as well. It's called Woodstock.
Woodstock is, I've tried to name them and use the colors. So this is CPR.
Right.
With the Tuscan and yellow. Essentially, I got it in Woodstock. There was a cement.
Right. So I'm just coming through the wall here and have a look at the rest of the plant.
Good old Walthers made a
nice
cement plant.
Yeah.
And so I
It's nice.
built that a long time ago.
It allows you to do something in the loop here.
Yep, it sure does.
And you got a little bit of a Purina Chow's place over here as well.
Yep. So this is it's mainline New York Central going through here.
Yeah.
This trackage is all CPR.
Right.
So this is a CPR train here. It switches cement loading, coal unloading, materials coming into the
Cement plant there.
cement plant, things like limestone and or they also used ash from the coal pits, from the
And it looks like you've got some dinner memoirs here. Table
Yes.
number 4 and table number 8.
yes.
Yeah, I have the one with the caboose, not the one with the
Yeah,
locomotive.
this is the caboose over here.
Yeah.
Well, we had two big conferences here in Ottawa over the last 15 years.
The Anna Maria, I guess there's another one coming up in a year or two here
Is
as
there?
well.
Oh,
Yeah, so we'll be doing it again.
Oh, I haven't been active.
Wonder what it'll be this time, a diesel? Maybe a boxcar.
It's got to be different.
Yeah, well,
It's got to be easy to do too.
yeah,
you know.
that's true. Yeah.
So there's so there's two trains that come in here. One is a local out of Woodstock, goes to St. Thomas. The other is a through freight that comes from Toronto and goes to St. Thomas. St. Thomas was quite an industrial area, and it also was a prime interchange for Toronto and Montreal with the New York Central, because they didn't go anywhere close to it. So there's two trains. One is the local, which is what this one is. He does all the switching in this area. The through freight comes out of here, which is this one over here. You'll turn around and go back. And he does the through traffic going to, as I said, Toronto and Montreal, and Hamilton and Kitchener and that kind of thing.
So in our next video here, what we're going to do is have a look at some of the unique aspects of your railroad in operation. I'm really interested in seeing how this passenger traffic works in the city. So let's do that, and then we can watch trains run through your countryside.
Okay. That sounds
Does that sound
great.
like fun?
That sounds great.
Awesome.